Welcome to another inspiring conversation in Underrated to Unstoppable, where we dive deep into the real challenges and triumphs of leadership. Today, we're exploring what it truly means to lead with authenticity, how to empower yourself and others in the workplace, and most importantly, how to recognize and overcome toxic work environments. Whether you're a seasoned leader, an aspiring one, or someone navigating a difficult workplace situation, this conversation is for you. So grab a cup of coffee. I've got a Red Bull. Get comfortable. And let's talk about building the kind of leadership that actually makes a difference. I'm joined today by Joanne Newborn. Let's get to it. So, Joanne, I know that you're a coach, and is that what you do 100% of the time, or do you also do something else?
I was doing coaching. I still am doing coaching, and but I have a company, and so myself and along with the other coaches in my company, we also do training and development, facilitation. I also do strategic advisory, and we also help companies that are smaller to help build their foundations from a strategic standpoint and a financial standpoint as well.
Oh, okay. So but you started out coaching first and then expanded or started another company. I just want to make sure I have that right.
Yeah. So I spent over 20 years in the corporate landscape. I was in sales and marketing. I managed a lot of teams along the way. And from there, I transitioned sort of accidentally, actually, into coaching.
Uh-huh.
And then it really resonated with me. So it was sort of a passion project that I had on the side. I really had no intention of ever leaving the
Right.
corporate world. I mean, I'm still in the corporate world, but in the, roles that I had at the time. And my passion for it really grew. And so that's how I ended up transitioning a few years later into having my own company and then expanding from there because I had gotten my MBA late in life. And I think the combination of having my MBA later in life and then also my coaching certification, I had this idealistic view that there has to be a perfect company out there because we have all the tools and the materials necessary. And yet I see the same issues coming up over and over again, regardless of industry, regardless of what country I'm in, regardless of what the company or organization is. So it became very fascinating for me.
Yeah. So why did you leave corporate? Did you leave corporate to start your coaching business, or was there some other catalyst for it? And then I want to get back to when you say you see kind of the same things over and over, regardless of the company and industry.
Absolutely. I would say it was a perfect storm, right? I had gotten my coaching certification. I had this passion project on the side. My love for that was growing and growing. And at the same time, I feel that the universe gives you everything that you need to make the decisions that you need to make. However, the forms that they come in aren't necessarily these nice little, pillows with a diamond on it. They come in ways that you wouldn't expect. And so I had this incredibly toxic situation at a very large publicly traded company. And it was unbelievable to me that this was going on. And I think a lot of people probably would have hightailed it out of there more quickly. But I think at that point, I knew I wanted to transition into going full time with my company. And so I really stayed in this horrible situation for much longer than I should have. But the what I learned from it was really incredible. And the protection that I felt for my team was really incredible. And the concept of these high performing teams, and observed other teams not having these
Mhm.
dynamics and watching them be these high performance teams. So that was sort of bubbling under the surface. And so that was sort of the two catalysts that really came along. And I contemplated. I had been in my industry for a long time. I was like, well, should I just look at another organization for a role similar to what I had? And I really had this strong pull to want to bring leadership into organizations, like really the concept of leadership, and what it means to be a leader, because what I was observing was, the exact 180 opposite of that.
Which I think a lot of us experience. So, to this extent that you can, because we don't ever want anybody to get sued, right?
Of course.
So I, of course, will never ask you to name the company or anything like that. But what made it toxic? Like, what made the situation toxic from your perspective?
It's kind of really unbelievable. I mean, like screaming in like 2 inches, from my face. And that was something that happened over and over again. And I wouldn't even say what was really toxic about the situation was this was an ongoing issue for years and I wasn't aware of it. So it wasn't just, specifically aimed at me. It was sort of anyone that comes in the person's path. But what was really fascinating to me, like from a coaching perspective, because I was already a coach at that time, was the culture that it created around it. It gave permission for other people on other teams to treat people with extreme disrespect. And so it just was okay to act this way. And so now you sort of see this expanding, beyond a one person, beyond one team. And it was a fascinating like psychological observation for me, but it really rooted me in what I'm so passionate about in terms of really building these high performance teams and what that actually means.
Right. And so, why, from your perspective, why do you think that that was allowed to go on in the company? Because I too have worked at companies, and where it almost seems like bad behavior gets rewarded, and I used to always say, oh, he has pictures on somebody, right? Because otherwise, why would a leader, let this go on? You've got your values on the wall that, that everyone espouses, but somehow some people just seem to get away with it.
Yeah. I think it comes down to the end of the day, KPIs and numbers and profitability and revenue. And if a company is moving in that direction, then people are willing to turn a blind eye to things that should be unacceptable. And that incongruency, though, I mean, the company has a bit of a reputation for having this incongruency and a culture that is not really admired. Yet, in terms of what they offer people and the benefits and salaries, that people are willing to forego that for their career advancement. So even look, I'm not guilty of acting this way, but I'm guilty of accepting it as a trade-off for salary and benefits and what looks great on a resume. So it's a very fascinating concept to me, because we want to be black and white, but things tend to be very gray.
Yeah, I think most things are gray, and what I find is, I'm a coach, as you're a coach. Your company sounds like it's a lot bigger since mine is just me. But the thing that I really want people to understand, and I'd love to get your perspective on it, is even when we do, I don't want to say turn a blind eye, but we don't stop it, right? Because sometimes that machine is just so much bigger than we are. But
Yes.
if people are going into a negative and toxic situation, that has an effect on them, and often both mentally and physically. And people are so willing to ignore that for what I call the short-term gain, which is usually the money, the benefits, and all those things. And I don't want to, dismiss that, because we all need that, right? Everybody has food, water needs. But in your experience and in what you've seen, do you have a perspective on uh, why people don't opt out of that sooner?
I think it's fear, honestly. I will tell you, a situation from very, very early on in my career where it's very idealistic. And I used to have interns that worked for me. They were high school interns, and I was very young. I was only like a year or two out of college. And one of the interns came to me and she said, I have an appointment with the head of HR and I don't want to go. And I said, why not? And she said, well, he takes photographs of all the high school interns and he has these albums and I'm just uncomfortable with this. And this was shocking for me. I mean, I was 23 years old at the time. And so I said, don't go. And if the HR person has a problem with it, then they can come talk to me. Now, again, who was I, this 23-year-old? But I felt very rooted in those convictions. And I think, the younger you are, you can still be more rooted in your values. And as you start to go up the corporate ladder, it probably gets more and more difficult because you have more and more at risk, right? I didn't have a lot at stake. And I did go talk to my manager, who I had a tremendous amount of respect for. And she said, keep your mouth shut, keep your head down, don't say anything. And I said, but we have an anonymous, box and she said, it's not anonymous and, just protect yourself. And so I did not let my intern go to that meeting. And when my boss was out traveling for business, this person came down and cornered me and threatened me for interfering with his activities. And I still was going to protect this person. And I was very sort of blank, poker faced about the whole thing. And the situation passed and she didn't have to have her photos taken. But I always think in hindsight, I could have saved everybody, right? But I just took care of my own intern. And I would think about that situation today and like probably things like this still go on, right? And that's the way we think. Keep your head down, look the other way, protect your own position and just move on.
Right. Yeah. Like you, I had a lot, I don't want to put this on you, so I'll say it's just about me. I had more courage in many ways at 23 than I did at 43, right? In the workplace. And as you said, the older you get and the higher up you get in an organization, you have more to lose, right? So you have more to protect, as well. And it really takes something, there's always some catalyst where you just say, no. I'm just not, if I can't stop it, I'm at least not going to be a party to it anymore. Yeah. So now you go into different kind of workplaces and working with leaders. And I don't want to say you go into toxic situations because I don't want to call your clients toxic, but tell me what you typically do.
I want each person to think of themselves as a leader, whether they're an individual contributor or if they are managing a team or if they're managing teams of teams. Everyone is really a leader. And when we start to think of ourselves in that way and we're grounded in it, your values come into that more because I start to shape this with them from the very first time we work together. What are the qualities and behaviors that you define yourself as? I'm letting them create this themselves. And so it's going to be different for each person. But once they start to get really rooted in that and they have a confidence around who am I? What do I stand for? It becomes a lot harder to turn your head and look the other way because I'm a leader now and I really can't allow this to happen. And so that's a really good starting point with my clients. I never see any of my clients as, the ones that may be toxic. They may be, but I believe in everyone exactly the same. Everyone has the same potential. And it's about really letting people be able to hold up the mirror for themselves and develop a self-awareness for themselves about what they may or may not be doing. That really starts to shape that. And that's when change begins to happen because they're viewing themselves in a different way that they haven't viewed themselves before.
Now, with your clients and the clients that hire you, do you find that you are, to use a term my mother used to always say, is, preaching to the converted, meaning people are seeing, okay, there's something missing. I need to come in. I need to call Joanne and her people and bring them in. Or do you kind of help them see the light, for lack of a better word?
Meaning the organizations or the individuals?
Both, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting question because from a coaching perspective, you really cannot coach someone that doesn't want to be coached, right? They have to want to make change. But I think by asking the right questions and powerful questions, I really want to know what people's outcomes are that they're seeking. So you can always find that even if someone's not buying into it. You're not here because you're in trouble, and you're not here because you need to get better at what you're doing. You're here because we are going to have a shared outcome that you're seeking, right? What are the things that you're trying to achieve that you're unable to achieve? And then, so you take it from that perspective. Maybe they've been trying to get ahead in their career, but they haven't been able to. And then we'll start to dig into, why is that? Or maybe they've had conflict, repeatedly over and over again. Are there patterns there that they feel frustrated with? So it really is about the person's outcome and what is it that they're trying to achieve. So when I work with organizations, I really want to get the perspective from both sides. I want to sit down with the coaching candidate and find out what their goals are. And then I also want to sit down with the organization and find out what their goals are and create a strategy that is very open, and so that it can be aligned, right? Nobody is keeping any secrets. Nobody in the organization is like, want this to happen. And then the person is saying something else. Like, we're going to be very transparent. We're going to put everything on the table. And now we're going to come out with a strategy that we're going to work on together to get both parties to where they want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you said that you almost kind of fell into coaching. And I think most of us, I shouldn't say most of us do, but a lot of us do. And, I fell into it as well. And one of the values, that I put together, in my company, number one was wasn't going to work with assholes. And I had enough of that in corporate. And the second one was I was not going to be a part of anything that was punitive, right? Or the kind of a check the box that we just need you to come in and coach this person. We don't think they're going to get any better, but we need to say that they've been coached so that when we fire them, we will have done everything we could, right? And so I always say that I'm not doing that. I'm based on positive psychology. What do you do if you run into that type of situation? Because it sounds like you're very much on that positive development outcome focus as well.
Yeah. So I like to get multiple perspectives then. So if the person is not willing to really see what's going on or hear it, like maybe doing a 360, so they're getting perspectives from up, down, and sideways, and they are not only hearing what their manager might be saying, but they're actually seeing again these patterns that are arising, and then getting their perspective. It's hard to refute something when it's coming from several different sources. It might be cross-functional teams, it might be your own team members, it could be your manager, it could be other people on your manager's level, it could be senior leadership. So when you're seeing the same thing over and over again, I'm not there to tell them that they need to change. I want to ask them, so you're seeing this is coming back in your 360. What would you like to do with this information? And then we can create a plan from there. So when things get, really sticky like that, it's always good to bring in assessments or 360s or start, stop, continues, so they can see it from a different perspective instead of one person's opinion.
So who's been your toughest client? Tell me who's been your toughest client.
It's actually
not by name, of course.
Yeah, no, it's actually a funny story. I had a client, and she wanted me to coach her son, and he was actually just graduating with his MBA, and he was having some trouble getting interviews and things like that. And so we spoke, and it just wasn't for him. And so I went back to my client and I said, he has to want this. So it's not going to be a good match. Mm-hmm. And 6 months later, because he had said, I just want phone calls. Like, I don't need coaching. I just want phone calls.
Yeah. Just get people to read my resume. And respond.
I said, it's not really what I do. But what was interesting about it was he was submitting so many resumes and he wasn't even getting interviews. And he had a tremendous GPA. He graduated from a great school. So it wasn't really making sense. And so 6 months later, my client said, I would like you to work with my son. And I said, I only want to work with your son if he wants to work with me. She said, he wants to work with you now. And I said, okay, I'm going to set up a call and talk to him. I want to be sure. And he was all in the second time around. And the really fascinating thing is that when we started to dig into the outcomes he was seeking, he was going for an industry that he should, right? That people told him he should be in. And when we started to dig in and look, I found something all the way at the bottom of his resume. I said, what is this? And he said, oh, well, it was something that I used to do in like high school. It's like something I really like to do. It was like coding and things like that. And we reshaped his whole resume, and he literally had gotten a job within a few weeks of working together. He called me, he said, my phone is ringing off the hook. And it wasn't aligned like with his heart and what he enjoyed. Now, he wasn't a difficult client once he became my client, but the beginning piece was just so funny. It was just like people that want you to do things for them that you just don't do, and you need to be able to say like, no, this is what we do and what we don't do. And I still get this from time to time where organizations might want us to come in and do the difficult HR things for them, and it's like that's not really what executive coaching is. We want to bring out the best in people.
Right. Yeah. When you're telling the story and about working with him the second time, I was thinking, well, if he's ready the second time, why isn't he calling you versus his mother calling you? And I remember many years ago, I had an intern, and I had given him his performance review, and it was okay, not great, right? And I believe in giving people an honest performance review so that they know what to improve on or to work on, or so that they can make that decision as to whether they want to or not. And he didn't talk to me about his performance review, but his mother called me about it. And I thought, wow. And at first I almost started to talk to her. And then I said, wait a minute, this is about your son. If a conversation is going to be had, it needs to be had between the two of us, your son and I. And she said, well, can we do it, the three of us? And I said, absolutely not. Your son's 23 years old. What's going on here? Let me switch gears a little bit and ask you, Joanne. So when you were in the company that, had the kind of the toxic environment, and now, are you the same person that you were then that you are now?
No, I'm such a different person.
Tell us about that.
There, as much as I didn't want to, I think I was still filled with fear, in that situation, and it brings up things, and I think, I'm getting into universal concepts and Eastern philosophy, but I do think the universe presents us with situations of things that we need to learn. And at that time, I needed to learn. I needed to step into my own power. I needed to learn more boundary setting techniques, and not just techniques, but just owning my own boundaries. I was very good at being able to protect my team. I was very protective, but I was allowing myself to be treated improperly. And so I did have a lot of fear around that. And now, I have changed so much. I've been able to take that and incorporate it into who I am. And the funny thing is, you mentioned values. One of the things that I do with my team is whenever we have a team meeting, which is just a few times a year, I will make sure that we go through our vision, mission, and values, because I don't want them to be things on a website or a piece of paper. I want people to truly live them. And if it's not in line with who they are, then, it's okay to be able to say, goodbye to people. It's okay to say goodbye to clients that are not resonating with my values. So I'm really rooted and grounded in, like, I practice everything that I preach and teach and coach on. And that's not always easy. Sometimes it's hard for me too, to have those tough conversations and ask for, what's going to be the best for the organization or the team. So yeah, and I'm always learning every day. There's never a pinnacle. The mountaintop is never.
Yeah. Well, I think that's typical for a lot of coaches, is we're always curious and always wanting to learn, right? It's just, you never stop learning. But what you're talking about, I call those moments that matter, right? When you realize that, okay, I've been going here and I need to go here. And when you're out of alignment, you feel it, but a lot of people don't pay attention to it. And of course, my circumstances were different, but I certainly learned to pay attention to it. So I would say, in your moment that matters, in the way that you describe it, that kind of takes me to what, of course, is always the signature question, in this series. To me, that sounds like at some point you got to the "you are enough" moment. So tell me about when you decided, or when you knew, or when you just felt, I am enough. What was that moment for you?
It was a rock bottom moment, actually. I had a situation with that particular manager, a terrible screaming situation. And I went to the ladies' room in the office, and I broke. Like, I was broken. I could not stop crying. And I had to have a couple of meetings with my team that day. And I couldn't stop crying. And that means I actually had to just leave the office midday, because I felt like I literally had been broken, and I couldn't stop crying for days, because this was like a buildup of several years of this, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And so I had made a decision to actually confront the person and actually lay a boundary down and say, I'm not going to be taking this treatment anymore, and I'm going to be attending meetings if they're conducted in a calm and professional manner. Otherwise, I will be leaving the room. And that was terrifying for me. I actually had my own coach helped me draft the message, and I didn't really want to go to HR about it. I didn't know that there had been other investigations that had happened in the past. I just felt that if there was something, I needed to address it head on, right? And that was really my moment of no turning back, and just knowing, this is who I am, and whatever consequences come from this, and there probably will be, I'm okay with, because I need to put my head down on my pillow at night and sleep and respect myself. And that was really the turning point for me.
And was it because first off, thank you for sharing that with us. And was it because you were, as you said, just so broken that you found your strength? Or was it, I can't break anymore, so I just have to do something? What was it? Was it a little voice that told you that this is it?
Yeah,
Always was. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like, I can't do this one more time. I cannot have a situation like this one more time. Yeah, there was just something, it's that inner true self, that inner knowing that's like, we're done. Not we're done. I'm walking out the door. I'm walking out the door on my terms when I want to. We're done with this treatment now.
Mm-hmm. And did it get better from that point on?
It did, actually. Mm-hmm. It did. I won't go into all the details.
Of course.
The behavior changed, which was shocking.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, just because it had been something that had gone on for many years, and it changed not only for me, but for everyone else,
Mhm.
as well.
Well, that has to feel good.
Yeah, yeah, it did.
So knowing what you know now, is there anything that you wish you could have told your other self that was in that situation that you just, it didn't have the wisdom, the experience, you hadn't been fed up enough yet, or whatever it is. Is there something you wish you would have been able to tell yourself then?
Yeah, I just wish I had been able to tell myself to do that like way earlier before it gets to your breaking point, to when, the first or second time it happens. And like you said, it sits with us. We know better and yet we ignore it, right? And so for all the time that I ignored it and just fluffed it off and said it'll be fine, it'll be fine, like I just wish way earlier I had been able to set stronger boundaries.
Right, right. And do you think now in what you do and in your work that you're able to um, ensure that other leaders aren't going forward that way?
Like I said, I try and build leaders from the ground up. I don't know that. So it's interesting as a coach, you probably see
Right.
this yourself, right? I don't know when I have a coaching client how they might be treating their teams. They
Mhm.
will not come to me and say, I'm yelling and screaming at my teams all the time. It's something that they want to accomplish themselves. Now, I also feel that we kind of attract, who we're being. So I probably don't have a lot of clients that are like that.
Mhm.
So I did actually have one though a few years ago, and I approached it the same way. I remember he got really upset with me. He didn't understand leadership. He thought it was a bunch of like hooey,
Right.
and um, he had someone come into his office that was like the lowest person on the totem pole and asked a question in his opinion that he thought was stupid. And he called me at 9 o'clock at night and he was very irate.
Oh my God.
And, you know, he said, I don't understand why this person's coming into my office and asking me this stupid question. And I just paused and I said, well, you know how I talk about leadership? If that person saw themselves as a leader, they would be able to come up with the solution on their own. And so, this is why I am working with your teams and you to create leadership mindsets, right? This person would be able to say, I can come up with a solution for this without having to go to the head of the organization to ask this question. And when I framed it like that, and it was a very specific example that I had given him. I saw that he had sort of a light bulb moment of like, oh, I understand what leadership is now. And we did work together and we came up with some great solutions. We actually offloaded a lot of things that kind of got under his skin. He needed to delegate a lot more, rather, and just do what he did best. And once we rearranged that, people on the team were coming and saying that they saw a huge difference in
Oh, that's
him.
great. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I often do, and I'm sure you use this as well with leaders. Are you on the dance floor or are you on the balcony? Right.
I love
Because it's
that.
really a matter of, if you're on the balcony and you're the leader, you're not really leading, nor are you helping your people learn self-leadership, right? Allowing that to happen. So, but anyway, Joanne, it was great to have you this afternoon to have a conversation with you. So, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't?
I don't think so. It's been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh,
Very
sure.
excited about it.